Hey guys, so this is What If Wanda and Pietro, or Quicksilver and Scarlet Witch were in Young Justice Part 1. Now guys, basically, for my whole entire upload time, I will be at least uploading 3 or maybe a tops 4 What Ifs a week. So on the weekends, it won't be random. On the weekends, I'll upload 2 What Ifs on the weekends. I'll upload about probably like 2 What Ifs on the weekends, 1 or 2 action figure pretty much content, and also 2 pretty much other random videos. It could be another 2 set of what ifs or another 2 set of action figure comedy or stop motions. So yeah. Now basically guys, my stop motion of pretty much my Time War stop motion is about like 5 minutes or 4 minutes. Basically, I'm going to be uploading that, but I need some voice actors. I went on TikTok. I got some people for voice actors for Ironheart. Pretty much Ironheart, pretty much only characters in pretty much episode 1 I got actors for is Comic Book Spider-Man. And that's basically it. So I got voice actors for other figures that I'm going to be pitting in my episode 2 or episode 3. So yeah, so basically each episode of my new stop motion series is going to be stretched out pretty far because I probably won't have enough time since school is starting up again and stuff like that. So basically what I'm going to be doing is that I'm going to be basically just, starting this up. Now basically that's my upload time. Now also I asked you guys on my first pretty much upload on my community, telling you guys are going to be uploading this video. Basically I asked also which suits should PHO be in. Now I picked the classic blue and white suit up, but most people pretty much said they wanted to see the green suit. Now the green suit is Speed's suit, basically one of the children of Wanda. But since I am going to be aging down Wanda and Pietro, I'm going to be making it a little bit, different. Now, Wanda and Pietro are kind of going to be from the Young Justice universe, but yeah. So basically, we start our series off with this part 1 off, season 2. Originally, I was going to put in the season 1, but I didn't want it to be 2 speedsters since Pietro and Wally, I didn't want them to be 2 speedsters. So basically, I'm going to be uploading. We're going to be pretty much continuing with season 2, episode 6, Bloodlines. So basically, on that episode, if you've seen it, basically, Impulse shows up. Now, Impulse is a speedster for season 2, or one of the speedsters in season 2. Basically, what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be changing and tweaking that whole entire thing about Bloodlines and pretty much about Impulse coming to Earth and all that other stuff. Let's get started, guys. So basically, start our story off with Pietro and Wanda Maximoff. Pretty much, we start our story off with Pietro. Pietro is about, let's say, 16 at this point, and Wanda is about 16 and a half, or Pietro is about 16 and a half. Now, basically, they would both be basically just, in retrospect, 16 years old. And Pietro would be basically the same type of build as Speed in his pretty much current canon, pretty much height and weight. Pretty much him just having the same, pretty much, characteristics of basically young Pietro, teenage Pietro version. The teenage version of Pietro with X-Men Evolutions. But a little bit more, not as jerkish or not as a pretty much idiot. Now, basically, Pietro in the X-Men Evolutions isn't really an idiot. He's just too much of a pretty much think in the moment type guy. He doesn't really think situations through. And that's basically how Pietro's going to be, but not as much as an idiot. Now, basically, let's start. Now, basically, Wanda. Now, basically, I'm going to be focusing on Pietro the most, but Wanda is still going to be a very, current character in this What If. Now, basically, Wanda and Pietro start our story off in the future, the distant future, where Impulse is supposed to be. Now, Impulse would actually, well, die. Sorry if anybody loves Impulse and Young Justice. Impulse would have died, so to say, in this timeline. Now, the Young Justice Season 2's Episode 6 original timeline would still exist, but this would be a different universe, or a different timeline, a what if, per se, because it is a what if. Now, basically, we start off with Pietro. Now, Pietro would have been working on a machine with Wanda and also the same, pretty much, well, bald man from the beginning of the episode. Basically, us being seen some sort of apocalyptic ash, pretty much, well, ash raining place, or pretty much Earth. Now, basically, we would see basically Wanda and Pietro, or on the perspective we never watched Pietro, we never seen Pietro or Wanda, and basically the viewers, if this happened in the season, it would be basically a white-haired boy in some dingy apocalypse type clothes, and basically also a girl, a redhead girl, or yeah, brown haired girl. Yeah, Wanda's brown hair. Now basically, we would switch back to basically, well, the team, or pretty much Young Justice, after seeing the quick little scene of basically seeing, well, them trying to build a certain device. Basically, we get switched to basically the cave or Mount Justice, where we see basically Nightwing, Tim Drake Robin, and Beast Boy talking. They're talking, but eventually they hear some sort of, well, disturbance, and energy starts coming out of nowhere. That energy pretty much transfers some sort of pod. Now, in this world, basically, Pietro and Wanda would be in that pod together. Basically, them having enough, pretty much Wanda using enough of her abilities to basically transport both of them. Now, basically, they, for their origin in this what if, since they actually are going to be mutants, basically in this universe, basically they're going to be the only versions of pretty much, well, mutants in their world. Basically, in this world, mutants are classified as better than metahumans because they are given more of a better powers or abilities. Now, basically, mutants and pretty much, well, metahumans are split into two categories. Since half the time meta powers can be very dangerous and can hurt a user of meta powers or meta gene, basically mutants are kind of the same thing, but more or less hurting each other or themselves. Now, basically, pretty much Pietro and Wanda would have been a new, pretty much generation of pretty much, well, superpowered beings or mutants or pretty much superhumans of their timeline. Basically, them trying to get off of that timeline before, well, a certain person that made the apocalypse in their future happened. Now, basically, pretty much Pietro would have started the ship up, and they would have came down to Mount Justice, and the ship would have opened up, them being in a fighting position, ready to, well, fight anybody that was in the pod. Now, basically, Pietro would have looked at Wanda to pretty much be on guard. Basically, Pietro opened up the latch, and him being in his green suit, basically just straight up, well, runs out of the pod, all impulse style, pretty much on his feet, squatting up and squatting back up, doing the whole entire impulse pose as well. And Wanda, shortly after, walking out, scratching her head, saying that was a pretty bumpy ride. Now, basically, Pietro would have pretty much, well, explained himself as, well, Pietro Maximoff. Quicksilver, the one and only speedster, the new generation. Basically, him going nuts and asking about, pretty much Beast Boy, Tim Drake, Robin, and Dick Grayson, and all other stuff. But not really asking it, just saying, see you guys later, deuces. Basically, him just trying to run out there and get out. Now, pretty much, the Robin or Dick Grayson would have asked, or would have told, basically, well, Beast Boy and Tim Drake to go after Impulse. Now, Beast Boy would easily get taken out pretty quickly by shower nozzles, or basically just Impulse out tricking him. And basically, Tim Drake would have ran into the kitchen where Impulse was, or where, sorry, pretty much Pietro was running around. But pretty much, well, Tim Drake would have tried to hit him with his bow staff, but Pietro would have dodged it pretty quickly. Now, Pietro, for his speed levels, he will be about the same speed as Impulse, but a little bit more of a twist a little bit. Now he would be the same speed as Impulse, but also a little bit more faster as well. Basically, he wouldn't have the Speed Force, but he would have pretty much, the speed of Impulse plus extra abilities that Quicksilver does have to keep himself from burning up or dying or breaking every bone in his legs or body by him running that fast. Meaning that basically he has the same type of abilities or powers or extra abilities that give him, the ability to actually go through and be as fast as a speedster without any of the speed force, and that's a lot of power, extra powers, like pretty much extra invulnerability or durability as you're running and stuff like that, and controlling inertia, stuff like that. You can just go on a video, you go on a video titled "Quicksilver is Stronger Than You Think" by a very good YouTuber, and basically pretty much Pietro would run up and down the hallways, basically us getting switched to basically, Grayson looking at Wanda saying, "Why are you here?" Basically, Grayson getting in a fighting stance is saying, "Just give up. I won't hurt you that much." Basically, Wanda saying, "I'm not really here to fight you. My brother's just an idiot sometimes, but we're just trying to get out of here to save." The pretty much before she can finish, we hear a little bit of commotion, where basically Pietro is fighting with Tim again, since Tim Drake would actually be the one that throwed pretty much the balls on the ground to try to trick Pietro, but he also takes Pietro out at the same time, pretty much knocking him upside the head after he's confused, or pretty much, well, knocked out, or pretty much distracted by the middle orbs on the ground, or the marbles. Now basically, Pietro would have been knocked out by Tim Drake, and Grayson would have been being kind of impressed. But basically, pretty much Grayson being kind of impressed looking at Tim Drake. Basically, Grayson looking back at Wanda, telling her to pretty much, surrender. Basically, Wanda would have said no. And Wanda would have held it out her hands, and red energy would have blasted out of them. Basically, blasting, Nightwing into one of the walls, knocking him out cold. Basically, Wanda would have grabbed Pietro and would have grabbed him or would have just pretty much used her telepathic abilities. Now, Wanda would have wound up just being kind of like a teenage version of her pretty much classic, pretty much pink and red suit. Basically, her using her powers to grab or pretty much pull Pietro towards her using her telekinesis to pretty much grab him and start to straight up just try to fly away. And basically, Grayson would have tried to stop them. Basically, him succeeding a little bit, throwing batons all around the place. Then just pretty much, guard Tim Drake and Grayson, double tagging or pretty much triple tagging both of them, trying to get them down. They succeed somewhat for a short amount of time, basically asking them for information. Now, basically, they would have tried to ask them about information. Basically, Pietro spilling the beans a little bit, basically saying that I know all about you to Tim Drake, Grayson, pretty much Gar, and stuff like that. Pretty much explaining that he knows your secret identities and stuff like that. Now, basically, we get switched to another scene or a story that was happening in this episode, but that's not really relevant. And basically, pretty much Gar asked Pietro about the future. Now, basically, Pietro was told by his sister not to reveal anymore because it can change reality, will warp the timeline, basically crashing the mode. Now, basically, they would have, kept quiet, and basically Grayson would have offered some water to, Pietro. Now, Pietro would have taken it, Wanda being kind of upset, Wanda knowing of Grayson's tricks. Now, basically, Pietro would have, would have not phased, but he would have used his powers to vibrate his pretty much body to such a level that it broke the cuffs, pretty much making them crack off of him, and him grabbing Wanda, piggyback style, basically just running out there as fast as possible, passing out of the way, and pretty much running straight towards, Wally West's place, or pretty much the West house. Now, basically, we would get shown, since Wanda and Pietro are from the Young Justice universe, and they're like a new bloodline, or pretty much species or era of superhumans, mutants, different from metas. Basically, they would have ran straight towards the west area. But the west area, Wally West, or pretty much Barry Allen, blah blah blah, the West House would actually be changed to the Maximoff House. So in this world, basically, Maximoff is going to be the last name, or basically the pretty much Wally West, Wally Maximoff. Basically, yeah. So basically, the West House will be named the Maximoff House. Basically, them getting down there, and this world actually being, well, this universe's Maximoff family. Basically, it being very different. Pretty much, yeah. So basically, that was sort of happened. Now, basically, we would get shown a little bit of a flashback, and basically going over the origin or how it happened or how Pietro and Wanda's childhood was like. We get switched to basically an old house when they're getting raised by their mother. Now, basically, they would have, well, they would be born and they would be raised. By the time both of them were about 9 or 10 or 8, they were exposing or exhibiting powers of sorts. Basically, well, their father, or their pretty much their father being very confused why Wanda had a different ability other than speed. Now, basically Wanda's abilities were so powerful, but she barely reached the iceberg. She only used her abilities like in telepathy and flying and pretty much telekinesis and stuff like that, but she can do so much more with her powers. Now, basically, Wanda would have been basically, well, keeping it to herself and basically trying to, well, help her, well, brother. Now, basically, they would have a bond so powerful, so, well, great, since they were raised together. They were trained together, and they were treated, well, with care, each one of them. And they knew more about each other than they knew about themselves individually, each of them. Now, basically, Pietro would have been kind of the pretty much, well, cocky one, more of the outgoing one, and more of the pretty much more, well, take action first type one of them. And Wanda was more thinkative. She more thought about the consequences of stuff and actions, stuff like that. So basically, you would see that Pietro and Wanda would have showed up there, and they would have been talking to them. Now, basically, Pietro gawking and pretty much saying a bunch of stuff about how, you have twins, to basically Iris West and also the other stuff. Basically, pretty much Wanda stopping her, saying, we are in the future, but we can't say too much. We can't say too much, Pietro. Basically, Pietro shutting up. And also Wally West or Wally Maximoff showing up. Now, in this world, Wally West would actually have white hair. Basically, Wally West showing up, pretty much saying, if you are from the future, just don't reveal too much about the future. You know what that can do to the timeline. Now, basically, we pretty much get a phone call by Flash, or very much from the police department, that pretty much is some sort of villain at Star City that's calling for the blood of Flash, or to pretty much, take him out. Then basically we get switched to the Star City, where the villain is causing havoc, basically pretty much bursting radiation from his body, and using his abilities to burn, or to pretty much be in the center of Star City at some sort of monument, or not really monument, just area. Basically, Flash getting ready, using his ring to get in his suit, and basically him getting ready to go. Now, basically, Pietro would have ran in right in front of him, saying, "I can go with you. I'm pretty fast as well." Pretty much, Barry saying no. Pretty much him talking to him the same way that he did in canon, or to pretty much talking to Pietro that the same way he talked to Impulse the same way. Basically, well, Flash saying, "I'll be back in a flash." Him running out. Basically, Pietro asking, "Does he always say that?" Basically, Wally, Iris West, and pretty much the two grandparents pretty much saying, yeah, he says that all the time. Now, basically, Wanda would have thought about this and would have said, "We're going anyways," right? Basically, Pietro saying, this is more of a speedster type deal. And basically, Wanda's saying, Okay, basically her sitting down, just looking around, her not really being interested in the whole entire spacer thing, just really being here to, well, prevent the apocalypse. And pretty much Wanda telling Pietro that it's his problem to, save the guy from the future with the whole entire, pill or the antidote or whatever. And basically Pietro saying, okay, let's go. Basically Wally and Pietro showing up there. Now, basically, Maximoff and Pietro showing up there. Now, basically, they would have ran out, and pretty much they would have shown up there. Now, they would eventually came across pretty much Flash showing up there, and they would have seen that the villain had a bunch of powers. He was just bursting radiation, blasting cars, destroying buildings, stuff like that. Basically, Flash would have showed up to save a baby and save a mom and a baby. Basically, him trying to keep the situation at bay. Now, basically, would see that this character, or this villain, was pretty much making a bunch of havoc. Now, Flash was running straight towards him to try to take him out, but he was easily, pushed off. Now, Flash was about to take him out using some of Speed Force, but him being pushed back. Now, out of nowhere, before Flash hit the ground, well, pretty much Pietro showed up and saved Flash. Now, basically, we will see the villain get back up, basically getting more angry or shooting more pretty much energy blast towards Flash and Pietro. Pietro would have told him that I have sort of an idea. Basically, Pietro running towards the guy just at full speed, trying to, vibrate his body, towards the guy. Now, basically, since Pietro didn't have the speed force, unlike his grandfather, basically, he didn't have the, extra abilities like, traveling through time or phasing his molecules or anything like that. I'm pretty sure Pietro can't do that, but Pietro can pretty much use his super speed to molecule his body or vibrate his body so much that any chains or anything, pretty much their chemical component starts breaking down. And also Pietro starts to get more, violent towards the villain, not seeing that the villain is just, taking him out, and more cop cars had to keep it at bay, seeing that the stuff wasn't keeping it at bay. Now, Wally West would have shown up in his, outfit, or Wally Maximoff would have shown up in his outfit. Basically, him getting ready to, assist the three speedsters. Now, basically, Pietro would have seen this as an opportunity, and after they were talking to the police, basically, pretty much they see that Wally, Flash, and Pietro are making some sort of giant speedster tornado around the villain, seeing that Wally is pretty slow compared to Pietro and Flash. And basically, Pietro is running faster and faster past Wally, Wally just trying to run faster. Basically, them using their pretty much tornado ability, all their combined speed to basically blast the villain upwards, trying to keep the damage to the minimum. Basically, the villain boosted up its energy more and more and more, trying to, defeat them. And us getting switched to some type of, people watching the whole thing. Pretty much us getting, to a speaker's perspective, seeing that they are, imbuing the villain with with the power. Now they see the villain is making more energy, making some sort of gamma blast, basically them running out of the way, trying to get away from the blast ratio. Now you see that Wally isn't running fast enough, he's about to get caught in the blast, but pretty much Pietro and Flash grab him, getting him away from the blast ratio. We see buildings, trees, cars, and everything in the blast. Now Wally isn't stopped straight away, since pretty much Pietro and Flash just let him go. And Wally tries to go in there, Pietro tries to go in there and try to, do some recon. Basically, pretty much while using his tech goggles to look up in some sort of binocular level, seeing that, the guy is regenerating or something. Basically, seeing that the guy is just muscle, but he soon regenerates his body into, flesh and a person. Basically, us seeing that the guy doesn't know what's going on, that he's, being mind controlled of some sort. And basically, the people that are watching him are kind of, confused, and basically say that they abort the test and they pretty much explode their, well, facility they are working on, or they are working at for the villain. Now we see the villain giving off more gamma radiation and more stuff, basically him blasting more energy and over time. Now basically, Wally says that the guy's too unstable, and says that we need to stay far away. But basically, Pietro pretty much grabs the glasses, looking at it, but also Flash grabbing them as well, looking at it. So this guy's radiation or his blast ratio is getting bigger. Basically, Pietro gives the idea, maybe we could take him out. Basically, them having the same idea that in canon, Impulse, Flash, and Wally had. Basically, Flash going first, running head on right towards the guy at full speed. Basically, Wally trying to, well, get to the guy through the radiation or through the blast that the guy's making. And basically, you see the guy basically, well, messed up. Now, basically, we see that as Flash is running straight to the guy, we see pretty much Pietro right next to him, running right next to him, saying that, this is kind of fun, isn't it? Basically, them running and them eventually colliding into each other, them tripping on each other's feet as they're running next to each other, and then falling into the, well, reality or into the current time, seeing that the guy's energy is getting bigger and bigger, and the guy's energy is going over control. Basically, this guy about to blow up. Now, Pietro and Flash get saved by basically, well, Bart Allen. Well, not Bart Allen. They get saved by Wally and, well, Gar Allen. Or, well, not really Gar Allen. Just, well, the original Flash with the, well, helmet. And basically, they get saved and basically they think about the situation and everything. Basically asking advice and stuff like that. Well, Flash asking the original Jay Garrick Flash. Pretty much, well, advice. Now we see Pietro running off, and we see Pietro run off to basically the smoke that's regenerating from the guy, and he throws some sort of white or blue ball towards the man, and the man is cured or something. Basically, the man, us seeing white, blue glowing veins or something towards the man's body. Pietro sees this and sees that the man is cured now. And we see Flash, Wally, and pretty much Jay Garrick see that the guy is normal now. Basically, Jay Garrick saying, "How did you do that?" Basically, Pietro saying, "It's some future stuff. You wouldn't know about it." Basically, the guy would have said, "Thank you." And we could switch back to basically the other story that was going on in episode 6. Seeing the assassin and pretty much Arsenal finding the original isolated or pretty much the original not cloned Speedy. Now, we see pretty much Pietro show up at Mount Justice. Basically, Pietro and Wanda about to leave. Basically, Wanda and Pietro about to leave. Pretty much Flash saying goodbye to both of them. Basically, they get back on the ship and they try to get off, but we see that the ship isn't working and is not blasting off. Now they both get out of it being kind of confused, and Wanda just tries to use some of her powers to restart it or reboost it, but it doesn't work. Basically, Pietro's saying this hunk of junk doesn't even work correctly. It's a one-way trip. Basically, Pietro's saying we're stuck here, aren't we? Now, basically, well, they pretty much tell Pietro and Wanda that you are welcomed here. And, well, you can join the team if you want to. We get switched back to the future, or, well, their future. And we get switched to basically the man from the beginning seeing himself cured. Now, basically, the man is cured. And pretty much we see the man look around saying no. Because, well, they haven't, well, prevented the apocalypse yet. Now, basically, we can switch to pretty much episode 9, since episode pretty much 7 and 8 didn't really show any real, points where Pietro or Impulse was in the story. So basically, here's to episode 9. Now, basically, we see Pietro, we start episode, 9, with basically Bumblebee running into her boyfriend. Now we get switched to basically, basically we see pretty much Blue Beetle and Pietro basically, hanging out. Now at this point, I really did miss the point where Pietro and pretty much, Blue Beetle, bonded, I guess. Now basically, in episode 7 and 8, nothing really bond worthy happened. So I don't know what happened here, but I guess they trained together or whatever. But yeah, so basically, Pietro actually shows up at Beetle's house. Basically, him knowing about Beetle in the future and everything. Basically, Pietro trying to become friends with Beetle, and basically making friends with Beetle in the future. And basically, you see Beetle pretty much, and Pietro and Beetle going out having fun, and also Wanda being with them as well. Wanda basically just escorting them, and Wanda not really want to let her brother go off alone and do something stupid. And basically, Wanda is pretty much in kind of a more modernized suit of her classic red and pink suit. Basically, this is what the suit Scarlet would, pretty much Wanda would be wearing. Just imagine, a 16-year-old Wanda. Now, basically, Wanda and Pietro and Blue Beetle would have gone out pretty much to have some fun. Basically, Pietro doing some sort of same type of impulse type rock, pretty much portrait with him, pretty much, showing off their powers and stuff with together. Basically, Pietro being kind of impressed by Blue Beetle's, blasting abilities and powers. And basically, Pietro sees that this is pretty cool. Basically, Pietro saying this is pretty crash. And pretty much us seeing some sort of small figure in the back as Blue Beetle seen from a distance or from some altitude, and basically some sort of blonde-haired woman jumping up and jumping on top of Blue Beetle, crashing him into the ground. We see some villains show up trying to capture them. Now, pretty much Pietro starts to run away, or not run away, just run around trying to keep them at bay. Basically, Pietro trying to stay him back. Basically, they gang up on them. Basically, Blue Beetle getting frozen pretty much solid by pretty much, what was it, Icicle. Basically, us seeing pretty much Blue Beetle free himself by one of his cannons. Basically, Icicle and multiple other villains getting pretty much attacked by Blue Beetle. Basically, Pietro and Blue Beetle and Wanda are just huddled up against each other, trying to keep them at bay. Basically, Pietro and Blue Beetle getting ready to fight or get it out of here. Actually, basically, Pietro about to run off, and basically, they pretty much Pietro looks up and runs straight towards pretty much Aqualad, pretty much dodging with him. Basically, him recognizing him from the future, saying that you're more of a traitor in the future, aren't you? Now, basically, Pietro runs off, grabbing the tracker device that they're tracking him with, and says, "We're ready to go. They can't track us anymore." Basically, them ditching them, and Wanda flying off next to pretty much Blue Beetle and Pietro running off. Basically, the villains are kind of confused, and kind of angry on how they got away, but we soon see that pretty much Aqualad isn't, pretty much scared at all, seeing that the tracking device that they grabbed was actually a tracking device in itself. And basically, we see Pietro and pretty much Blue Beetle and Wanda show up, and basically Wanda senses something bad from the thing. Basically, pretty much, Nightwing saying you made a terrible mistake. Basically, him, pretty much triangulating or pretty much looking up the tracking device, seeing that it's a tracking device in itself. And basically, we see Aqualad show up, pretty much tricking the security, pretty much, stuff for the thing. They basically think that, Aqualad is a good guy that's just going to the cave. Now we see Lagoon Boy getting captured by the Hive or the Reach, basically him being experimented on alongside other, kids that are going to become metahumans. Now I get switched back to pretty much the college where Blue Beetle, Bumblebee, and her pretty much boyfriend is, but we get switched back to the cave where the main story is happening. we see basically the wolf get collared, and we see pretty much Gar get a pretty much knock on his door. Basically, Gar running towards it or jumping towards it, opening it, and him getting immediately knocked the dust off. Basically, him getting knocked out. Guess there's a Superboy near the pretty much memorial area at the bottom of the Mount Justice, and basically we see Superboy tangle with one of the villains. Now, basically, Superboy breaks out of the icicle, tries to face him, man, and Superboy gets pretty much gapped with a collar that induces or pretty much weakens his powers, and Superboy starts getting taken out pretty quickly. Now, Superboy tries to fight back, but he can't fight back, and basically, well, icicle takes a type of remote control and pretty much the shocks the life out of Superboy. And basically, Aqualad tells him not to kill Superboy yet, and saying that you have your chance yet. We need him alive. Basically, them saying to move on. Now we see Pietro, Blue Beetle, Wanda, and pretty much Grayson looking up that this thing is a tracking device and that they're here already. Us seeing Superboy getting thrown like a rag doll towards Grayson, knocking him out for a few minutes. Basically, Pietro running towards the icicle, basically seeing ice on the ground. Pretty much, Pietro saying I've seen this trick 100 times. Basically, him running up the wall next to pretty much Icicle, knocking out Icicle. Pietro sees pretty much one of the villains carrying Gar, and pretty much Pietro tries to run into one of the villains. Basically, him getting pretty much, pounced it off, and basically, one of the villains try to put a collar on Pietro. Now, Pietro says, I can just get out of this. Basically, him vibrating his molecules to break the collar, and him getting out of the villain's way. Basically, the villain's confused on how he can get through it, but basically, Pietro's saying, I'm a new breed. These collars don't work on me and my sister. Basically, Wanda gets up and starts to make more of a energy manipulation type stuff and starts blasting more pretty much energy and stuff like that left and right, and starts to pretty much attack them. Now basically you see Blue Beetle being one of the last ones alongside Pietro and Wanda, seeing Gar and multiple others basically captured. Now basically we see pretty much Pietro, Wanda, and pretty much Blue Beetle are told to stand down, seeing that they have Grayson, pretty much a bomb, and also Gar at their mercy, and also pretty much Aqualad having a bomb or a dead man switch set in the cave. Now basically Blue Beetle Scarab says that we have a 99% chance of surviving this explosion. Basically Pietro pretty much Blue Beetle saying that my friends don't. Now basically Pietro and Wanda are told to stay back and not to follow them. Basically them getting out of the way, and pretty much them getting out here, grabbing what they came for, or getting what they came for. And basically they pretty much knock the holy smokes out of Grayson, keeping Nightwing away. Basically them walking away. And basically we see them pretty much we see Pietro being nice and says not to, give up, or not to, give up so lightly. Basically, Pietro, straight up just ditches them, running off and grabbing the bomb and running as fast as he can. Fast enough to a point where he gets away with the bomb towards some water area and throws it in the water as he's running on water and comes back to the cave. Now we see Aqualad look at Pietro saying, I knew you would do that, Pietro. Basically, Aqualad taking out another dead man switch, saying that I always have a second one in command. Basically, Pietro seeing as the second bomb. Pretty much, Aqualad saying to put the collar on. Basically, Pietro saying it won't matter, we're still gonna have our abilities. Basically, Pietro saying, yeah, you're right. Basically, telling, pretty much Aqualad to, telling Aqualad to Aqualad pretty much tells them to, break Pietro's ankles. Now, basically, Pietro's confused, but out of nowhere, one of the villains straight up just kicks Pietro's kneecaps in and breaks his legs. Basically, Pietro falling on the ground in pain. Wanda gets in anger and pretty much about to take him out, but when she gets knocked the dust out in the back of her head, like getting sucker punched in her pretty much dome, basically her getting knocked out as well. Now we see pretty much Blue Beetle and Blue Beetle, Wanda, Gar, and pretty much Blue Beetle, Pietro, Wanda, and Gar, the powered ones, are getting taken away. And we see that pretty much, well, Aqualad, when he drops the dead man's wish, when he gets kicked by pretty much Blue Beetle as Blue Beetle pretty much rebellions, basically we see that, well, basically see that the real dead man's switch was with pretty much Artemis, and Artemis blows up the place, not trying to let the villains think that they're well soft, or not trying to make them think that they aren't, or they are on their side, but they're actually, actually double agents. And basically, Pietro, Gar, and Wanda see that the building, or pretty much the cave, blows up. Basically, Gar being super, well, terrified. And also Pietro and Wanda. Now, Pietro tries to vibrate out of the pretty much ropes or whatever that's on him and his collar, but we see that pretty much Pietro tries to phase out. He does succeed, but he tries to run away. He tries to run off, but he suddenly falls out to the ground. See, his legs look okay, but it's super bad purple bruising on each of his kneecaps. Pietro's super, well, powers, or his metagene, or pretty much his mutation, gave him sort of a superhuman type speeding, speed healing, kind of like Flash. By the time Pietro gets to the place, or by the time it's the next day, basically Pietro's needs will be good enough for him to run at least Mach 1, but Pietro won't be fast enough to really take down anybody like superhuman levels. And basically, Pietro's legs were, messed up, so he couldn't really do that much. Also, we see that Aqualad and others are still alive because the ship saved them, or pretty much the ship that was owned by, well, Superboy saved them. And we also see that basically, well, we also see the only way they're keeping Wanda down is they're using some sort of gravity feature on the, pretty much, well, cuff on their neck, or pretty much well, locker, or I know that the power disabler. Basically, they use it on Wanda, and then basically they use it to basically tase Wanda. Basically, each time they see Wanda trying to use her powers, basically they just shock her, and basically, yeah. So basically, pretty much the collar is actually, well, reprogrammed to basically work if Wanda ever tries to move her hands or tries to use her abilities. It will shock her, but it won't turn off her powers. Basically, it just, well, picking up certain frequencies in pretty much, well, her bloodstream or in her heart, saying that her heartbeat speeds up as she uses her abilities. And basically, we see them, well, get hauled down and them getting captured. We get switched back to pretty much Superboy and Nightwing and pretty much the ship, and all of them, well, pretty much being saved. Now, basically, we see that the ship sinks, but we see that the ship isn't, dead. It just needs to charge. We get switched back to basically Aqualad, and we get switched to Aqualad. Basically, well, we get switched out to pretty much backlashes of Aqualad not being on their side, being a double agent. Basically, Wally or Maximoff pretty much confronting Nightwing about how, you aren't even getting it through your head. What if Aqualad is working with the enemy? What if he isn't even a double agent? What if he's just messing with you? Basically, pretty much Nightwing says, I don't think Aqualad would do that to us. Basically, him saying that I have faith in him. Basically, Maximoff or pretty much Wally Maximoff, basically saying that you don't even know you don't even see the truth. Aqualad is using you. Basically, him saying that he's being too much of a villain. He doesn't look like a game anymore. it really does look like he actually is enjoying this. It's his father after all. He's working with his father. Do you think he would betray his father over his best friends? He would betray us to save his father. I would. Basically, Wally walking away. Now we get switched back to the villains, pretty much having Pietro, Wanda, Gar, and Blue Beetle in their custody, then basically taking them to the Reach, and pretty much Aqualad being accepted and talking to the light. Now, that's where I'm going to leave it off here, guys. So, hope you guys enjoyed the video. Hope you guys like and subscribe. And as always, guys, have a blessed day. Now, guys, before I, hit you with the outro, basically, before that, after this video, by the time this video uploads, it's probably going to be like 6 something or 7:39 or 7:38. Basically, after I upload this video, I am going to be uploading 2 custom figure, pretty much. I'm going to be uploading my custom Wolverine, or custom, not Disney Feature Pass Wolverine, custom, live action Wolverine action figure video. Basically, it's just going to be a compilation of TikToks I made of progresses of that figure. So yeah, also going to be doing the same thing for pretty much a tutorial of a homemade figure you guys can make if you're into making pretty much hobbies or making stuff and stuff like that. So yeah, guys, hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you guys like to subscribe, and bye.